Tashi Delay, and welcome to the Kalachakra Part 1 class. The text for this class that we will be using is The Ornament of Stainless Light, and this is the best known commentary on the Tantra, and so we will be using that as the basis for much of what we talk about in this class. I'd like to start out the class, though, with a little bit of information. We get a little bit more of a complete picture of the background and history of the Tantra in this book, Kalachakra Tantra, Rite of Initiation by the Dalai Lama with Jeffrey Hopkins. So I'm going to start with that material in Chapter 5 here, the history of the Kalachakra Tantra. So, according to legend, at least, Shakyamuni Buddha first appeared at Vulture Peak, which is where he gave the teachings on the Prajnaparamita, the Heart Sutra, those kinds of things. And then simultaneously, according to this legend, appeared at Daniyakataka in South India as Kalachakra. And so he was appearing both on Vulture Peak and in South India at the same time, but in the latter case as the form of Kalachakra. As a part of the audience of that teaching, King Sachandra, who is considered to be an emanation of Vajrapani, was there and received the teachings and is said to have memorized them as they were taught. And he later then compiled the Tantra in its long form, the 12,000 stanzas or verses. And he was from Shambhala. And Shambhala is considered by scholars, best guess at this point in time anyway, is in the area of East Turkestan. So then there were 6 additional kings in Shambhala that maintained the tradition, according to the legend again. And Manjushri Kirti is one who initiated as many as 35 million seers into the Kalachakra mandala, according to the legend. And then he composed a shorter Tantra of 5 chapters, which is 1,047 stanzas, although the exact number varies a little bit by source. And this was named the Condensed Kalachakra Tantra, or what is currently called simply the Kalachakra Tantra. This was followed by Kulika Pandarika, who composed the commentary, the great commentary on Kalachakra Tantra, the Stainless Light, or what we now call the Ornament of Stainless Light. So this is the text that we will be using for a part of this. Now, there are some questions about some of the information that is in the legend of what happened. We do know that the Muslim invasion in around 624 AD or CE is said to have destroyed or certainly create problems with the Shambhala area. And it is said that Kulika Pandakarika, who did the commentary, returned to India in 966 and began to disseminate the teachings. The author of the Blue Annals, which is oftentimes used as the most likely historical evidence that we have available for many of these things, also argues that the Kalachakra Tantra reappeared in India long before that time, and in the text here it gives some of the reasons for that, mostly citations that were given by other authors in other texts as providing some evidence of that having already existed. And as a part of that, there is a reference here to the Kalachakra Pada. And it is said here that it is likely that the Kalachakra Pada, the greater, there's a greater and a lesser, so the greater is the considered the father, who is actually Chilupa himself. And so when he went to supposedly Shambhala, and then wrote down this condensed version of the text, it is said that he most likely was the actual source of that. And then he also then initiated Nadapada, who became known as the Lesser Kalachakra. One of the scholars, Hoffman, concludes it would seem that the whole further tradition of Kalachakra derived from these two, that is Chalupa and Nadapada, not only in India but also in Tibet. Nadapada in turn initiated Atisha. And then there is agreement that the Kalachakra Tantra came to be widely known in India from about 966 AD. Which is around the time of Atisha, and he went into Tibet from India around that time. Also, that with Chalupa's return, and he became this became very effective in India in the period of around 974 to 1026. So that gives us a little bit of a time frame. So this was around the time of the second dissemination of Buddhism from India into Tibet as a part of that. And so that Kalachakra Tantra was absent in India for such a long period of time has led to the suspicion that it was actually written in a Central Asian country. Hence the references to Shambhala and the possibility that Shambhala was actually in the country of East Turkestan. So there are a number of things in the text itself that it gives hints of it from other possible sources than the main sources of India and Tibet. And so as we look at the language that is used, the textual analysis of that language and how it is used and so forth, then we get ideas from that from a scholarly point of view that certainly there were other influences involved in the development of this text. So these were then developed, and we have a number of other people. A student of Nadapada, the Kashmiri Somanatta, went to Tibet, and then we have the dissemination within Tibet. One of the key figures in that was the translator Dro. He completed a translation of Kulika Pandarika's great commentary, The Stainless Light, and that established what became known as the School of Dro. In addition, there was a translator of Ra, who studied Kalachakra Tantra for almost 6 years in Kashmir with Samantashri, another former student of Nadapada. And so we have these connections going on here in terms of how this was transmitted into Tibet. And so this became the Ra school. So we have the Dro school and the Ra school. The Ra school became particularly important in terms of the Sakya order. Bhutan and Dolpopa were key figures as a part of that in terms of the Sakya order. They're called the two great expounders of the Kalachakra in the land of the snows, and received teachings and transmissions from both the translator Ra and the translator Dro. So those figures developed additional texts in which this became consolidated from those two traditions into a single tradition within the Sakya order. And then Bhutan's disciple conferred the Kalachakra initiation on Tsongkhapa. And so we have the development then, the influence within the Gelugpa order, Tsongkhapa being the founder of the Gelugpa order that came out of Atisha's development of the Kadampa school. And so it was he himself, who wrote a number of short works, this is Tsongkhapa, on aspects of the Tantra, and there were a number of other individuals within the Gelugpa order who wrote things as well. However, in the Gelugpa order, the Kalachakra Tantra has received considerable attention, although it is not their central Tantra. The central Tantra of the Gelugpa order is the Guhya Samaja Tantra, and so within their Tantric schools, it is the Guhya Samaja that is taught as the main Tantra. But there's been considerable interest among the various Dalai Lamas, including our own 14th Dalai Lama, and he has given the transmission any number of times. Just to kind of complete the historical information a little bit on this, in the early 19th century, the Nyingma scholar Mipam also wrote a two-volume work, including an edition of the Tantra itself and a commentary on the entire text called Clarifying the Meaning of the Words of the Glorious Kalachakra Tantra. And so, but this one, as nearly as I was able to ascertain in trying to do some background research on the Kalachakra, has not been translated into English at this point in time. Like I said, as nearly as I've been able to ascertain. And then finally, just one other note to add to this history. The author here, Jeffrey Hopkins, notes that it appears that it did not spread into China, Korea, Japan, or Southeast Asia. So mostly in India, in perhaps East Turkestan, and in Tibet were the primary recipients of these teachings. So that gives us a little bit more historical information about the Tantra itself. If you're real interested, although one of the chapters, one of the parts of the Ornament of Stainless Light, so we will be looking at this, looks at the initiation process. But if you're interested in a book that focuses on that aspect and goes into more detail, this Kalachakra Rite of Initiation text with the Holiness the Dalai Lama and Jeffrey Hopkins is a good resource for that purpose. In terms of the class, other things that we will be doing, we will have some texts available, and so one of those is the essence of the Kalachakra Tantra, which is a very, very brief form of the practice. This is a Dzogchen version of Kalachakra Tantra, and that text is available when we get to the sadhana practices, which is another one of the parts of the text here. Will go into a little bit more of the detail of explanation and so forth, but if you have had the Kalachakra initiation or at least some other highest yoga tantra initiation, then you may use this one that is available on the website for this class, and you can do this very abbreviated version of the practice. We will also be adding, this is the Kalachakra Guru Yoga in conjunction with six-session practice. Six-session practice is a way of practicing where you do 6 sessions each day. Not each of them is exactly the same, but there are various parts, and you emphasize certain parts at certain times during that. But we will also make this one available. This one was provided during the Kalachakra initiation by the Dalai Lama in 2017 this year, and so this one is not copyrighted, so we will make it also available as a good practice, an optional practice for you. And there are a number of other practices available in other texts. We'll talk a little bit more about them as we get into that part of the class. So we'll take a short break here, and then we'll start looking at some of the parts of the Ornament of Stainless Light.